Is Linda Noonan. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm the senior pastor, and I'm really happy to be together this morning. Some of us were in the backyard a little while ago. It was brisk and cold and beautiful, and we're really happy to be in this space now. In the words of that last song, we are circling. This is community. This is celebration. This is sacred. So thank you so much for worshiping with us this morning. I invite you wherever you are to just take a moment and feel yourself in space, in your body, in the place that you are right at the moment. To notice what's happening inside you and around you, to be curious about those who have gone before you in the place that you occupy right now. Here in Philadelphia, we're at the church this morning, Kipp and I. We are on land that has been traditionally stewarded by the Lenape people. We ask that our worship and our words and our choices and our actions and our lives honor our Indigenous siblings and this sacred land. So we are grateful for all of the lands that hold us this morning. I'll invite Kipp to begin us this morning with our opening song.
We've actually got a prelude before that from Kyoko.
We sure do. Thank you so much.
They can't take that away from me. And Kyoko, thank you so much for that. And it looks like our slide has gone through a censoring process, big bars through parts of the slide. But we'll see what we can do with those today. Strange quirks of Zoom sometimes. But Ian, if you could put up the slide, I'd invite everyone to join with me in singing. There we go with the odd grayed out parts, but we can see all those words, I think. So I invite you to join me in singing Swing Low, Sweet Chariot. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. I looked over Jordan, and what did I see? Coming for to carry me home. A band of angels coming after me, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. If you get there before I do, coming for to carry me home, tell all my friends I'm coming too, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. I'm sometimes up, I'm sometimes down, coming for to carry me home. But still my soul feels heavenly bound, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home.
Thanks, Kipp. The next thing we'll do will be our opening sentences, and I'm wondering if there's anyone who would love to or be willing to help lead us in those, particularly if you haven't had a chance to do it or do it in a while. Before we put those words up, they're words from a Joy Harjo poem. Is there anybody that would be willing to take the leader role when those slides come up? Rhoda, great, thank you so much. And is there anyone who would be willing to read the people lines? Great, Ellen, thank you so much. Awesome, great. We'll bring those slides up, Ian, then. And Rhoda and Ellen, you should be able to unmute yourselves.
We stand first in our minds.
And then we toddle from hand to furniture.
Soon we are walking away from the house and land of our ancestral creator gods.
To the circle of friends, of schooling, of work, making families and worlds of our own.
We make our way through storm and sun.
We walk side by side or against each other.
The last road will be taken alone.
There might be crowds calling for blood or a curtained window by the leaving bed.
Lift your attention for the appearance of the next road.
It might be through a family of trees, a desert, or on rolling waves of sea.
It's the ancient road the soul knows.
We always remember it when we see it.
It beckons at birth.
It carries us home. Amen.
Thanks so much, Rhoda. Thank you so much, Alan. Really good to hear your voices. Thanks for leading us. Just a few announcements this morning. We're really grateful to all the people that made worship this morning possible. We're grateful this morning in Zoom Church for Ian, who's behind the curtain as our tech lead, and for Becky Jamros and Heidi Fabian, who are our greeters. We're also grateful for the folks that helped out and pitched in this morning in the backyard. This coming Sunday, the 14th, we have a guest preacher. Very excited to welcome Reverend Piwa Langani. Reverend Langani is the ambassador for innovation and engagement for the United Church of Christ, one of our 2 denominations. You can learn more about them at this link. I'm going to be also sending out another reminder today about their visit with us. I'm really excited. I met them virtually when I saw them lead a portion of the United Church of Christ every 4-year General Synod. And I was really kind of captivated with their presence and their spirit. And we had a chance to connect. And I hope you'll be able to join us next week to welcome them and to hear them bring us a word. Next Sunday, the 14th, is also a council meeting. So council will be meeting at 9 o'clock in the morning. You are welcome to join that conversation if you would like. And that link is there in the chat. We're really grateful to our trustees and everyone else who pitched in yesterday, who spent time doing work around the property, painting and cleaning up and raking leaves and getting us in good shape here on the grounds. We're really grateful for those efforts and that labor and those commitments. So thank you so much. If you have questions for Church Council, you can reach our chairs, co-chairs Michelle Williams and Eli Vandenberg, at the email address churchcouncil@chestnuthillunited.org. We also have a prayer request email, and pastors would be honored to be praying with you and for you. And you can email those prayer requests to prayers@chestnuthillunited.org. And then we've got a couple other things. So this coming Wednesday the 17th, so a week from Wednesday, there will be an important action in Harrisburg as the Power Interfaith, of which we are a founding member and an active part, and allies across the state are coalescing around the Capitol to put pressure on legislatures to ensure that our children's schools are funded fairly and not on the basis of race or zip code. And so there is an action on the 17th. It's a Wednesday during the day. In the afternoon, several of us from church will be going. If you're interested in joining us, in either riding with us or connecting with us around that, you can email me at seniorpastor@chestnuthillunited.org. And our sci-fi book club is back, and we'll be meeting on Tuesday the 30th for a discussion of the Prey of Gods. So that gives you a little bit of time to read the book. And even if you haven't read it all or at all, you're still welcome to join that conversation. So are there any other announcements? Great, thank you so much. I am looking around the room. I don't think I see any children, but if there are, give me a shout. I think not. So before we kind of pass on from our time with children, just because there aren't any kids here who might be ready to speak this morning, I just wonder if we could just take a moment to think about them. It is our time with children, and so in their absence this morning on Zoom Church, I just want to collectively raise them up, be curious about and wonder what they're all doing this morning, probably be grateful that they're not on a screen, but hope that they're engaging this beautiful day in some kind of life-giving way. and to just be grateful for all of the children that have been a part of this congregation, all of those children to come, and ask for God's blessing and holding of each of them. Amen.
Good morning again. Our first reading this morning is another Joy Harjo poem. You can probably tell I've been reading a lot of Joy Harjo, who, again, if you don't know the name, she's our poet laureate, the first Indigenous poet laureate that we've had. She's of the Muskok people. This is another poem. Her recent book of poems from 2019, I believe, An American Sunrise, deals with a lot of the ongoing reverberations of her people's land being occupied, the indigenous experience of Europeans. It also deals with lots of questions of mortality, and so there are one of the poem we use for our opening sentences is one of those mortality poems. The poem that we will have for our first reading is another of those. It's a poem called First Morning, and it's dedicated to her friend Shan Gashorn, after she had died. And there is actually a video of Joy Harjo offering this at a reading. So I thought we could hear it in her own voice and own words as she does some setup to the poem and then offers the poem for us.
And we're all here for just a little time. You may not think that when you're young, but as you get older, I know that there's some kind of equation that will tell you how time shifts, in relationship to your age. Because we all remember being very young and how one day was an eternity. Being called in from the eternity of outside as a little kid from playing was, it was, horrible. And nowadays and it gets faster and faster. But life is still precious all the way. And in that equation, you would also see that the story doesn't begin when you're born. It begins way before your birth. And it doesn't end when you leave. It just keeps going. And I think when you come into this world, you know that. When you spend time with newborns, they come in, they still have the whole story. They still remember the story. And they will tell you that story. And I've noticed that usually somebody comes in with every child. It's usually somebody of your relatives, somebody who's come in as a caretaker. And when we leave, they're there to greet us. And the story continues. For Shan, first morning. This is the first morning we are without you on earth. The sun greeted us after a week of rain in your eastern green and mountain homelands. Plants are fed, the river restored, and you have been woven into a path of embracing stars of all colors, now free of the suffering that shapes us here. We all learn to let go, like learning how to walk when we first arrive here. All those you thought you lost now circle you, and you are free of pain and heartbreak. Don't look back, keep going. We will carry your memory here until we join you in just a little while, in one blink of star time.
Our Bible reading this morning is one of the assigned lessons, this one from the book of Isaiah, Isaiah chapter 25, verses 6 through 9. This is one that gets read at funerals sometimes. It says, "On this mountain, the Lord of hosts will prepare for all peoples a banquet of rich food, a banquet of fine wines, food rich and succulent and fine-aged wines. On this mountain, God will remove the mourning veil covering all peoples, the shroud covering all nations, destroying all death forever. God will wipe away the tears from every cheek and will take away the shame of God's people on earth, wherever they live. God has spoken. On that day, it will be said, this is our God. This is the one for whose liberation we waited. God is the one in whom we hoped. Let us be glad and exult in our deliverance. This is God's good news. This morning's Bible reading captures a vision of people who were well acquainted with suffering. It's from a little section of the relatively large book of Isaiah that scholars refer to as Isaiah's apocalypse. It just kind of pops up amid some of the gloom and doom. It doesn't seem directly related to the particular context where it is or to any of the sections around it. But it's very clearly a product of people who had suffered violence and exile at the hands of neighboring empires. And it's meant as a word of hope, a balm for people living inside a legacy of trauma and who had endured harsh deprivation and loss. The image of a feast, a multinational, multi-ethnic feast at that, a gathering where loss is restored, where trauma is repaired, where body and soul alike are fed. It speaks powerfully to the hopes of wounded communities. As a reading for All Saints Sunday, it also offers us a handy question. Whose table would you like to sit at that feast? For folks who know me long enough, know what my answer is going to be. With the group of us who are outside in the back, I said, if you know me well, you know my answer is going to be, and Linda said without missing a beat, John Coltrane, which is true. Every single time it's going to be John Coltrane, but I want to go a little bit beyond my obvious answer this morning. Even though Coltrane was one of the most innovative and influential musicians of his day, and even though he accomplished that while also staying so rooted to his humanity that he was known to do things like take tickets at the door to give the doorman a break at the club. And sometimes he'd donate his share of ticket charges to make sure that club employees got paid. That's not even to mention that the newly released A Love Supreme live in Seattle had me weeping ecstatic tears a week ago. So, okay, I guess I just gave John Coltrane as my answer again. But I'm also thinking of Pauli Murray. She died in 1985. But I never heard of her until Linda posted about a recent documentary on her life. My name is Pauli Murray. You can stream that on Amazon and it will be worth the 93-minute investment of your time. Just one story from that for this morning. I'm not going to replay the whole hour and a half. How in 1940, she and her friend Adeline Mack McBean rode a bus from New York to Virginia to visit her mom for Easter. As was common at the time, it was Jim Crow America. Once the bus crossed the Mason-Dixon line, Black passengers were expected to move to the back. Murray described it this way. She said, "The bus was the quintessence of the segregation evil. The intimacy of the bus interior permitted the public humiliation of Black people to be carried out in the presence of the privileged white spectators who witnessed our shame in silence or indifference. And once their bus crossed into Virginia, more white people boarded and many of the Black passengers moved to the rear out of habit. And the driver told Pauli and Mac that they needed to move back as well, but one of the seats where the driver told them to go was broken. And so they refused. And the bus driver dug in. We've heard this story before, haven't we? Somebody not moving to the back of the bus and the bus driver refusing to move and then calling the police. And this bus driver called the police who came and arrested them. Murray reached out to the NAACP. She wanted to be part of a court case that would challenge the legality of bus segregation, but it didn't work out that way in 1940. The judge saw what was going on and so didn't even bring up segregation in the trial, but just charged them with disturbing the peace. But the experience gave Polly Murray her first taste of working with highly accomplished lawyers in pursuit of civil rights. Thurgood Marshall was one of the people on her legal team. It was one step toward a remarkable history in which Murray would become a civil rights activist, a human rights activist, a lawyer, a women's rights activist, and the first Black woman to be ordained as an Episcopal priest in the first year that the Episcopal Church ordained women. I should mention that I've been speaking about her using she, her pronouns because that's what most scholars use. And those are the pronouns that a lot of the folks in the film use. But Murray was also gender non-binary, a trailblazer every which way you look. There's a lot of story to learn in that documentary, but I named the bus story because it happened 15 years before Rosa Parks jump-started a movement with her own refusal to give up her seat. On this All Saints Sunday, it reminds me that our giants stand on the shoulders of giants. Nobody comes out of nowhere. The writer of the biblical book of Hebrews said that we are surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses. It's a classic reference point on All Saints Sunday. And Polly Murray's story reminds me at least, that the cloud of witnesses holds names we should have heard long before most of us ever did. So I definitely want to sit at Polly Murray's table in that apocalyptic feast. Maybe Marie Wilcox will be sitting there too. Marie Wilcox is among the saints who entered that great cloud of witnesses this year. She was 87 years old when she died this past September the 25th. She was a member of the Wukchumni tribe, which is one of several indigenous groups in California's central San Joaquin Valley, and they come under the broad umbrella of the Yokuts people. But unlike other Yokuts tribes, the Wukchumni don't have federal status, which means that they don't have the same resources to preserve their culture that some other tribes have. Marie Wilcox spent a large chunk of her 87 years working at a fruit packing house. She was keenly aware of her status as the last fluent speaker of the Wukchumni language. And so she got to work and spent more than 20 years of her life putting together a dictionary of the language and giving language lessons at a career development center. She got the dictionary copyrighted before she died, and now her family is looking for someone to publish it. In 2014, the New York Times made a short documentary about her that showed her hard at work typing Wukchumni words and stories into an old computer at her home. She said, in that documentary, she said, "See, I'm uncertain about my language and who wants to keep it alive, just a few. It's sad. It just seems weird that I'm the last one. I don't know, it'll just be gone one of these days, maybe, I don't know." It's probably too early to tell how long the Wukchumni language will last. Marie Wilcox was once its last fluent speaker, but it did not die out with her in September. There are at least 3 fluent speakers now living thanks to her dedication, and the language classes at the Career Development Center continue without her. So if there is an apocalyptic feast where people come from every nation and are gathered around a meal of rich food and rich wine, I hope that Marie Wilcox is at Polly Murray's table, and I hope that I can sit there too, or at least come around to refill the wine glasses. I won't say anything, I just want to listen. But this isn't just a day for dinner party questions, as fun and as fascinating as they can be. All Saints Sunday is a day to remember that we all carry a legacy. Each one of us, for better and for worse. We hold within us the people we came from, the people who shaped us, the people who nurtured us, people who hurt us, people whose memory touches our shame reflex, people who we think of with pride. the ancestors we were given and the ancestors we choose. It's a day that invites us to step into the ever-moving current of life, to notice and name who has carried us to this point, to remember that we also will dissolve into the flow, to name our grief and our gratitude. One source that does that really well is Sarah Freilig's poem, Wondrous, which I encountered only recently. It gave me goosebumps the first time that I read it, so I figured it was worth sharing in church. And she writes about just an everyday experience, the experience of being stuck in traffic, but in a way that took her to somewhere else. This is what she writes. I'm driving home from school when the radio talk turns to E.B. White, his birthday, and I exit the here and now of the freeway at rush hour, travel back into the past where my mother is reading to my sister and me the part about Charlotte laying her eggs and dying. And though this is the 5th time Charlotte has died, my mother is crying again. And we're laughing at her because we know nothing of loss and its sad math, how every subtraction is exponential, how each grief multiplies the one preceding it, how the author tried 17 times to record the words, "She died alone," without crying. 17 takes and a short walk during which he called himself ridiculous, a grown man crying for a spider he'd spun out of the silk thread of invention. Wondrous how those words would come back and make him cry. And yes, wondrous to hear my mother's voice 10 years after the day she died, the catch, the rasp, the gathering up before she could say to us, "I'm okay." I love what she does in this poem. It is an accurate naming of grief. Every subtraction is exponential, and each grief multiplies the one preceding it. But this is also a catalog of gratitude, a naming of ancestors, both given and chosen. She's naming saints, her mother, yes, but also the author of a beloved children's book. In naming this moment of childhood innocence, she is also tracing the ripples from the deeper waters of life that intersected to make it possible. E.B. White and her mother in a communion of tears brought by an imagined spider who represents all human loss. She names her grief, but she ends ultimately in gratitude and wonder, offering to us, her readers, this tender, ragged moment that conjures E.B. White and her mother into our own imaginations. The dead are brought back to life in her internal world and through her into the world of any of us who read the poem and are moved. And life flows on. Perhaps our acts of memory are one way in which that apocalyptic feast Isaiah imagined becomes real. To name is to invoke, to stand in the presence of those who have shaped us, who have shaped our world. To name is to bring to mind people in all their complexity and to offer ourselves as the holders of memory. We are a land in which they live. So All Saints Sunday invites us to name. I name people who died this year who were part of this congregation or who were part of people who are part of this congregation. I name Willie Mae Hayes, who is Molly Davis's grandmother. Andy Lewis, who is Gracie Lewis's father. Joe Palucci, who was Dora's father, Paul Haynes, Cassie's father, Lynn Galesian, Lori Tennant. And who would you name this morning? I would invite you in this time to come off mute. We'll also later at the end of the sermon, we'll hear another piece that Kyoko has sent, and you can also put names into chat if you would like. If you've got pictures of folks, you can hold them to the camera. But in this moment, I invite you, if you would like to come off mute, to name your saints, the people you invoke, the people that you want us to hold.
I name my brother, Don Anderson.
Now, I've been asked to name Engracia Figueroa, who was an advocate for people with disabilities, and to name Ovid's friends Lynn and LL.
I'll name Dan Guest raised this morning that his uncle Vernon died just this past week on All Saints Day. So Vernon Guest.
So we stand as the holders of memory. We are a land in which they live. We name them, all that we might put in chat in a moment. Hold them together. This moment of naming, this moment of memory can be an apocalyptic feast where we join Polly Murray and Marie Wilcox, and John Coltrane, E.B. White, and Sarah Frelig's mother, and Andy, Joe, Willie Mae, Paul, Lynn, Lori, Vernon, where we can say to them, along with Joy Harjo, we will carry your memory here until we join you in just a little while, in one blink of star time. This is God's good news. Amen. And Ian is going to put on the piece of music. Kyoko sent us a medley with When the Saints Go Marching In. If you have photos that you'd like to hold up, you can do that. We'll try to spotlight you. If you want to put names of folks into the chat, we welcome you to do that as well.
Oh, Kyoko, thank you for that. And thank you all for those names, raising them, and all those who are unnamed who have gone before us. This is the time when we weave together the stuff of our lives into a common prayer. As we prepare to do that, Kipp will lead us in our sung prayer. At this time, I want to just draw our attention to what it means to give of ourselves to this church, to this community, and to the world. There are many ways in which people give their financial resources, but also their time, their energy, their prayers, their presence, their gifts, and their service. Maybe Kipp or Ian could put information about how to give in the chat. We are grateful for all of the ways that each of you have given to this community to make our life together and our ministry and mission in the world possible. So we give you thanks. At this time, then we can go to, I believe we can go to the next slide. This time, I invite Kipp to lead us in our closing song, We Are.
This one's got a lot of words and a melody that might not be intuitive if you don't know it already, but you can do your best to follow along. This is We Are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage and fathers of time. We are daughters of dust and the sons of great vision. We're sisters of mercy and brothers of love. We are lovers of life and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth and keepers of faith. We are makers of peace and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are one.
Amen. Thanks, Kipp, for that song. Go from this place. Know that you are a tapestry carrying the threads and the strands and the stories of so many given ancestors, chosen ancestors, plant ancestors, ancestors of faith. Know that you too are woven into the tapestries of others and held in the fabulous fabric of God's love. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. Go in peace. Amen. You're welcome to come off mute, say hello, goodbye, konnichiwa. We are so glad that we have been able to share this time with you together this morning.